As I was rereading my sermon, I realized it's kind of pretty obvious today. It's not an exciting sermon, it's really just a reminder of the truths of God amidst a world that doesn't always reflect God's values. It's not a big epiphany, it's just a simple act of being in right relationship with God. Sabbath. Do you have a Sabbath day? You know, that day God asks you to stop and reflect and dwell in His love, or do you respond a day? A full day? Really? A full day? There's just too much to be done. We're in the middle of a crisis and the work is piling up and the home projects are piling up. The kids need attention and I really should spend some time with Reverend Amy. But you want me to take a full day, God? Really? Sometimes I think God isn't really living in my reality. I have two speeds in my life, go and stop. I go from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. And I know that isn't a healthy way to be in relationship with God, and others are idle of being busy or living on the brink of exhaustion or having every multitasking device to allow us to save time all comes together to mean less time with God. That's not what God's asking of us. My go-to response to this kind of rhythm has been to put in place swaths of time of vacation. It was my vacation 5 weeks ago, and I still haven't found my beach mojo. What do you think is happening to my soul? In order to stop, I have to really step away. How do you find Sabbath? When you can't find a rhythm in your life, how do you disconnect? When the world means that we're using more technology to find God, how do you find Sabbath when the world is in pandemic? It's one of the most critically important questions to me, because if we don't, we will all be a bunch of bitter, cynical, burned out people. And that's not what God is asking of us. I have a little bit of a problem with our scripture text today from the gospel, because you remember Jesus has been preparing to preach. He's been preparing for this moment for 33 years, and he's got all this stuff he wants to say. He's got the ear of the people, and he can't decide what to focus on. So it all comes out in the Sermon on the Mount. It's just a bunch of information. It feels like Jesus is giving us a list of things to do, and in the very midst of it, he throws in these lines: take more breaks, get some rest, worry less. Like I need anything else to add to my to-do list. Make more time for your relationship with God. Go get some exercise. Clean the car. Get the yard mowed. I got to read those articles about organizational theory I've been putting off. Read more Thomas Aquinas and less Facebook. Stand up for racial injustice in our country. Oh, and take more Sabbath time seriously. I need to do more and more and more. This is certainly how it feels to me. One more thing to do to be part of God's kingdom, and that's how I think we have missed the point. This Sermon on the Mount is a long list of ways to be in relationship with one another and with God when it isn't easy. But if we see it as a checklist of things to do, then it's a task and it's not a way of living. Jesus is much more interested in knowing that you have a sacred space, that you meet him as a disciple. He wants to know, he wants you to know that he has come to give you rest. You aren't justified by your busyness or how much you think you deserve a break right now. You're called to take time for your soul. You're called to take time for others, to make space for those you love. Our bishop of the Mountain Sky Conference says that there's a difference between your day off and your day of Sabbath. And she's differentiating these two moments of a break from work and stress with a moment of reconnecting with God. Sabbath is not about a bike ride. It isn't about a vacation. It isn't about praying. It isn't about standing on the top of the mountain alone looking down at the Gallatin Valley. Sabbath is about finding God in your life and God's kingdom with you. You need space for rest. And that means finding the practices that connect you with God. If you want Sabbath, you have to put work in for it to be a part of your life. Sabbath is the day you act like the work is done. even if it's not. Sabbath is when you remember that efficiency and effectiveness are not God's highest goals. Joy is, hope is, faith is. The Sermon on the Mount is not the only place we hear about rest. It's listed as one of those 10 commandments that we as faithful followers of God do. It's listed in Genesis as an act of creation, that God rested after God created. But as I see it, God didn't create the world in 7 days, and we aren't really expected to step away from all of the life for one full day. It's just not reasonable in our world. It's not reasonable in this time, and I'm not sure it's healthy either. To say we will go and go and go for 6 days, and then on the 7th day, we'll just have a crash day. So I wonder instead, what if we viewed Sabbath as a time of contemplative practice that reconnects you with God every single day? That it's the time every single day you work on your relationship with God. Here's the real secret about Sabbath. The world out there, the world that we see and experience, they don't really need you so desperately. It's a hard thing for me as a pastor to say someone else can come in and do my job. Who needs me then? The world does. But not for the sake of efficiency and effectiveness. The world needs you, just for you. When we get out of a production mentality and into kingdom mentality, we see what's important and what is not. On May the 24th, 1738, 282 years ago today, John Wesley had his famous heartwarming experience on Aldersgate Street. He was leading a Bible study on the book of Romans, and he walks out of his house and out onto the street, and he writes, "An assurance was given to me that God has taken away my sins and has saved even me from the law of the dead." That's why we as Methodists are heart people, passionate people. But Wesley was running on burnout. He was running without a break. In his life, he preached over 40,000 sermons. He never took a break. He never took a rest. He pushed himself constantly. And so 3 days later, 3 days after he was assured of God's love for him, he wrote, "I cannot find in myself the love of God. I have no joy, nor have I such a peace that excludes the possibility of fear and doubt." It's an incredibly sad state to live in, but one that I don't think is entirely foreign to us. This is why Wesley is important to me. We all need to have the assurance of God's grace. Sabbath. Sabbath is us trying to create that strangely warm moment again. It's why we struggle with Jesus' invitation to rest. Rest on the way to the mountain. Rest if you're in the valley, and rest if you're at the very top. Because the world does need you, but it needs you rested in a way that Wesley could never rest. The world needs you because you are enough right here and right now. It doesn't need your burned out, angry, snippy, snarky self. It needs your authentic, vulnerable, rested self, connected to God daily. Physical health is not why I ride my bike. I ride my bike to be present with God. I get in my kayak to be present with God, because that's how I find Sabbath. That's where I find the contemplation that connects me with the divine. And I don't always do contemplation really well. It takes me a while to get quieted down. It takes me a while to find that soft space, that relaxation. Maybe for Sabbath for you is a day. Maybe it's a 30-minute walk. Maybe it's a 60-minute bike ride. Maybe it's laughing with friends, wearing masks and 6 feet apart, of course. But each of those has the ability to connect you with the God of love and the God of hope and the God of faith. All of us are carrying a burden right now. And your burden is no more heavy than mine. And my burden weighs no more down on me than yours does on you. Jesus said to those disciples after that Sermon on the Mount, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourself and rest for a while. Just a little while."